Today, we're diving deep into our own genetic code, and we're going to talk about a powerful new technology that's reading it like never before. It's solving medical mysteries that have stumped doctors for decades, and we're going to break down exactly how it works. Okay, so to really get this, we have to start with the scale of the problem. You hear the term rare disease, and you probably think, well, it's rare, right? Affects just a few people. But when you add up the thousands of different rare conditions out there, they actually affect a huge chunk of the global population, up to 6.2%. That's literally hundreds of millions of people all around the world. And here is where it gets really tough. Despite all of our incredible medical advances, for more than half of the people living with one of these rare conditions, the root genetic cause is still a total mystery. They have symptoms, but they have zero answers. This whole process, this journey, it actually has a name, the Diagnostic Odyssey. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a long, frustrating, often years-long cycle of going to different specialists, getting countless tests, dealing with misdiagnoses, all in the search for just a name for what's happening. It is completely exhausting, and it leaves families in the state of limbo. So why? Why is it so incredibly hard to find the answers? Well, a big part of the problem lies in the very tools we use to read our own DNA. Let's get into why our very best genetic tests have some pretty serious blind spots. For the past decade or so, the absolute gold standard in genetic testing has been a technology called short-read sequencing, or SRS. Now, it's been revolutionary, for sure. But the way it works is by basically chopping up our DNA into millions and millions of tiny little pieces. We're talking just 50 to 300 letters long. And then the software tries to stitch it all back together. I want you to imagine trying to understand a really complex book, but instead of the book, all you have are millions of tiny shreds of paper, and each one has only a single word on it. Yeah, you could probably piece together the simple sentences, right? But what about the really complex paragraphs, or the overall chapter structure? Or what if a typo spans across two different words? That's the exact challenge we face with short-read sequencing. And because of that, it leads to some major blind spots. For one, it has a really hard time seeing big structural changes in the DNA, like an entire paragraph being deleted or just moved to another chapter. It gets completely lost in highly repetitive code. I mean, imagine trying to reassemble a page from thousands of shredded slips that all just say the word "and." It also can't tell the difference between two very similar but crucially different paragraphs. And it completely, totally misses these subtle chemical marks on the DNA that acts kind of like punctuation, or even tell us which copy of a gene came from which parent. So with this short-read technology, this is what you get. Huge parts of our genetic book are, for all intents and purposes, unreadable. They look blurry, or they're just completely blacked out. And for so many patients, the answer to their medical mystery is hiding right there, in one of those dark spots. But what if we could read the book in a totally different way? This is where a true breakthrough technology comes into the story, one that finally lets us see the full picture. I'd like you to meet long-read sequencing, or LRS. Now, instead of reading those tiny 50-letter fragments, this technology reads our DNA in these massive, unbroken chunks. We're talking pieces over 10,000 letters long, and in some cases, all the way up to 1 million. The difference in scale here is it's staggering. So let's go back to our book analogy for a second. We've totally stopped trying to piece together single words. With long-read sequencing, it's like we're now reading complete paragraphs or even entire pages all in one go. The context, the structure, the flow of the story, it all just becomes instantly clear. And check this out. This is the transformation. Remember those blurry, dark, unreadable regions of the genome we just saw? With long-read sequencing, boom, they just snap into sharp focus. For the very first time, we can light up the entire genome and actually see the genetic variations that were completely hidden from us before. So let's put them side by side. It's pretty stark. Short-read struggles with any complex or repetitive DNA. Long-read just solves it. Short-read misses the big structural changes in the code. Long-read spots them perfectly. And maybe most importantly, where short-read only sees the letters, long-read sees both the letters and those crucial chemical modifications, the genome's punctuation. It is a fundamentally more complete picture of what's going on. Okay, so the technology is obviously impressive, but what does it actually mean for patients, for their families? Let's take a look at the real-world impact. So what is the actual, tangible difference for those families who have been on that diagnostic odyssey for years, who have already had the best standard tests, and they still have no answers? So here's the bottom line. When researchers take these really tough, unsolved cases and apply long-read sequencing, they get a definitive diagnosis in an additional 7 to 17% of them. Now, that might not sound like a huge number at first, but for those families, it is absolutely everything. It is the end of a long and often painful search for an answer. So here's how it plays out in the real world. A patient goes through all the standard tests, but nothing comes back. No cause is found. The odyssey just keeps going. But then long-read sequencing is performed. It lights up one of those previously dark parts of their genome, it finds that one hidden genetic typo, and finally, after sometimes years of searching, that patient and their family get a definitive diagnosis. The researchers who actually authored the paper we're looking at today put it perfectly. They said that long-read sequencing provides diagnoses for families with rare diseases that would not have otherwise been possible. That's such a powerful statement about the truly life-changing potential of this tech. Okay, so this is clearly a game changer. The final question is, what does the future of genetic diagnosis actually look like, and how do we get there from here? Right now, LRS is mostly used as a kind of second-tier test. It's a specialist's tool for the really tough cases after everything else has failed. But the goal, the dream, is to make it the standard approach. We want LRS to become the first-line diagnostic test. Imagine a single comprehensive analysis right at the very start of the journey. Now, of course, there are some hurdles to clear. The cost still needs to come down, the speed needs to get faster, and we need to build these massive databases of long-read data so we can better understand what's normal variation versus what's not. But the good news is that progress on all of these fronts is happening incredibly fast. Because the ultimate goal is so clear and so worth it. To have one single test that can read the entire genetic story accurately and completely, right from the very beginning. A test that could end the diagnostic odyssey before it even really begins, providing answers faster for everyone. And that really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? We started this conversation by looking at rare diseases, but this technology gives us the power to read the full, unabridged story of our DNA. So what other complex diseases, from cancer to Alzheimer's to heart disease, have secrets hidden away in those pages that we are now finally able to read?